Zach, we do have one more story that was in the headline, and that's Will Menaker's comments about AOC. Do you want to take a look at that?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have it over there, or do you want me to pull it up?
I do have it, yeah. Let me grab that real quick. Obviously, Will Menaker is one of the hosts of Chapo Trap House. And he had some interesting comments about AOC, someone that Zach and I have also been quite critical of over the years, but I think we both agreed that we're willing to accept her as a leader if she stands up as a leader, if she actually starts to really lead in a real way. And I think she has. So, I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. I think she's a lot better than the other corporatist Democrats, people like Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, frankly, 90% of the other options on the table. So that's kind of where our analysis is, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm interested to unpack this from Will Menaker, obviously of much acclaim from Chapo Trap House. And I don't want to come across as too much of a fence sitter, but I really understand where people on the left who have been grinding it out for a long time, who have been really invested in this progressive mission, can feel a little bit prickly towards AOC and the amount of insider baseball she was willing to play during the Biden administration. I also disagreed with the amount of insider baseball that AOC was willing to play during the Biden administration. It's one of the reasons Gavin and I have been so stoked to watch her be a central part of the Bernie Sanders campaign. It seems like she might have learned from that mistake. I think her shrewd, cold, calculated analysis was that the Bernie era was behind them, and if she wanted to maintain her career in Washington, she was going to have to play ball a little bit during the Biden years. I don't agree with that positioning. However, she was able to survive the Biden years and has now kind of come back to the progressive movement in a big way. After some disappointing votes. Obviously, the Iron Dome vote is one that really sticks out to people, but there are others. The Met Gala thing was not very cool. It was kind of cringy. So I totally understand where a guy like Will Menaker is kind of like, you know what, fuck around and find out. You reap what you sow. But on the other hand, I find this massively unproductive. And I'm like, what do we get from having AOC fail? We get nothing. So I would rather cheer for her to succeed.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at this. And, he has some interesting comments here.
Look at AOC now. And,
I was going to ask.
Whenever I'm critical of her, like, people crawl up my ass or whatever. And, like, I spent years probably, like, biting my tongue because I'm not trying to be, like, as reflexively, like, to shit on her as much as...
We need to differentiate the political program from whatever AOC is doing with this, like, bodies.
Like, recently, like, when she just lost her, like, oversight committee bid to head up that committee to a guy who's, like, 75 and has cancer. And I just see that and I think, good. Buy the ticket, take the ride. Because, like, I mean, this is what you wanted. This is what you wanted. So, like, I mean, and it was her on stage at the DNC saying they're working tirelessly for a ceasefire.
Give me a fucking break.
That to me was like that. That was. I mean, like, it's just like I rooted for her when she first got in office. But I was skeptical then, but now I don't have to be skeptical anymore. There isn't no hope in any of this. Look at AOC now, and
I feel like it's hard to disagree. Just like with everything he's saying, because I do also have frustrations with AOC that I've voiced on the program before, where she's folded to the Democratic leadership, where she's refused to really be that left flank, aggressive, revolutionary presence in Congress that I think people thought she would be. So I definitely share some of his disappointments with her performance. I was also very critical of her stupid line at the DNC where she said Kamala Harris is working tirelessly on a ceasefire or whatever. But I do just think, as someone said in chat, that I just get doomer energy from this. Oh, yeah. And if I was able to have a conversation with Will, I would genuinely be interested in asking him, like, while I don't totally disagree with you, what is your answer? Like, who do you think is going to be a more appealing and successful leader of the left and a better communicator? Because one thing you can't take away from AOC is that she has had a lot more success than her contemporaries at actually connecting with the residents in her district, not just attracting a hyper liberal voter base, but also getting people who also voted for Donald Trump in New York to vote for her too. She's a good communicator. She's youthful, and she has progressive politics. So certainly you can nitpick her, as we all have. But in this moment, I don't feel like there's all that many better options as far as like the bench, right, for talent in the Democratic Party. I feel like she's one of the best. And as far as generating enthusiasm for a progressive movement, she might be the best.
I think that it's total doomerism, and if you have that POV, that's fine. But it's like you're probably not in the right game. Like, what is your end goal then? You know what I mean? And that's why this kind of analysis really frustrates me, because I've seen this time and time again. And two things happen when people take this religious kind of tone that nothing's ever going to get better and that it's the end of the road and that we're totally fucked. You either become a Republican in 5 years or less, okay, and you're just like doomerism, nihilism, nothing matters, might as well make this bread, might as well grow in popularity, might as well throw more marginalized people under the bus. I'm not saying that's what Will Menaker would do. He's far too successful to ever have to do that. But a lot of times that's what the people that will look up to him and feel inspired by him will ultimately grow to do. Or they'll just stop paying attention to politics altogether, because what the fuck is the point anymore then if nothing's going to get better? You know, and I just don't really appreciate this perspective, right? I think it's bad strategy, for one, to find somebody who agrees with you on 85% of the issues and make that person your enemy. I'm going to cheer for that person's downfall. Why don't we cheer for the person's downfall that we disagree with 85% of the time? How about 100% of the time we disagree with them? Why don't we start actually saying, you know what? Fine, AOC's not your cup of tea, then that's totally cool. She is still, by and large, one of the best Congress people we have. There's over 400 people in Congress to be pissed off at any given time. Why are you picking the one that fucking represents us among the best, right? That'd be, you know what I mean? Like, I get it. She's not quite as good as Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib. She's not as quick to stand up for Palestine. That's a problem. I would never deny that. But I'm also not going to be like, I hope she fucking loses because she pissed me off. Like, no, that's dumb. That's bad strategy. I don't hope that we get a more conservative senator in Massachusetts because I've had beef with Elizabeth Warren's decision-making in the past, right? I can play chess, not checkers, right? I understand we have to play a long game. We had a great conversation with Olayemi Olurin a while back, but it really helped me cement my outlook in how I was going to do this podcast. Obviously, we deeply admire Olayemi. She's a great movement lawyer, but she was like, dude, you like, this does not happen overnight. You are not the first person to decide you wanted to dedicate yourself to this cause, and you're not going to be the last person, and nobody finishes rolling the ball up the hill. It's a continuous movement. You get to be a part of moving the ball forward. That's what you're signing up for. You're signing up for an effort towards harm reduction. You're signing up for an effort towards making the best decisions. You're moving the ball towards helping most people and hurting the fewest people. That's what it is to be kind of engaged in American politics. You don't just get to cast wishes and hope that they come true. You know what I mean? And I feel like part of the brutal, muddy, disgusting reality of politics is that we have to just kind of fucking swallow the unfortunate aspects of AOC and continue to kind of elevate her because she's one of the best we've got.
Yeah, I think that that's true. I think that oftentimes in politics, you know, you don't really get to pick your leaders. The leaders do sort of just emerge. And as I said, I think that AOC has emerged as a leader. And it's not for us to decide who resonates with the populace. AOC does. She is amassing insane crowds, right, at the rallies that she appears at with Bernie Sanders. She's been consistently reelected. She's made gains within her community. And as I said, she even was able to score a lot of Trump voters to also vote for her. That's something we need in a candidate. We need someone who can appeal to normal people that were duped by Donald Trump. Again, AOC seems to have that ability. Whether or not we like it, she has emerged as that person. Outside of Bernie Sanders, she's probably the single most popular representation of a progressive and of that ideology to just your normie person. Because if you just talk to a normie person, they probably think AOC is the furthest left member of government. Like they're not familiar with the fact that she didn't force the vote. They don't care about the fact that she voted for the Iron Dome or whatever. Like these things are big issues to us, but to your average person, AOC represents a firebrand, young progressive. And the fact that she's getting people excited about that ideology, I think is important and something to be celebrated. At the same time, I think we also, Zach, should continue to discuss our reservations about AOC. Because if we are going to continue to elevate her into a position of leadership, I don't think it's a good idea to just paper over and ignore the red flags that have popped up. So that's not the issue I have with the Will Menaker thing. I think that there's a lot of legitimate issues that we would have to examine throughout AOC's track record if she is going to continue to be elevated as a leader and if she's going to continue to lead. Because what if she does become president? I mean, we have to think about that. Will she sell out the left? We've talked about how she's had traits in the past that remind us of Obama. So it's certainly a conversation that I think is important to discuss. And the fact that she is not necessarily the very best or most revolutionary candidate. But I just don't think this doomerism is helpful, where it's like, yeah, I'm glad she lost that leadership position. Yeah, fuck progressives. They're all just losers. Like, no, she's still far better than the competition.
No, that's very well said, and I completely agree with you. That's why I felt nuanced about this in the beginning, because I understand the frustration that Will is articulating here. But what it really boils down to is the whole like brain poison of like, I'm glad that she got screwed. Like, why? Why are you glad that she got? How does that give you more power?
Right.
It's kind of like when people say that they're glad Kamala lost. I'm like, why? Do you think that's going to make the Green Party do better in the next election cycle? It's not going to. Okay. Why are you happy that we have a fascist in power right now? That makes everybody who is not a terminally online leftist get repelled by you. So it's not exactly productive messaging. And I am going to drag the left along with Gavin, kicking and screaming towards positions that will help us win. You know what's really popular? Our fucking ideas. Okay. So let's put those to the front. All right. And let's not, like, you know what I mean? Like when we talk, like Gavin and I, we talk about eating our own. Okay. We're eating the conservatives that are infiltrating our party. Okay. That's different than the people who we have in actual office. Like, I don't have a reason to come out here every day and smear Elizabeth Warren. I don't have a reason to come out here every day and be like, you know what? I have a niche disagreement with Summer Lee. Let me air that out for all of you, right? These are people that we have in power that are going to make decisions that by and large I agree with way more than the other folks that are in Congress right now. You know what I mean? What we cannot have is people who are only interested in electing people that they have 100% agreement with. That's never going to work. It's always going to be a strategy that hurts us and never elevates us. You know what I mean?
Yep. And speaking of Elizabeth Warren, by the way, I agree with you. But the one thing that I always obviously criticize Warren for that will never be forgiven is the fact that she did not endorse Bernie in 2016 and in 2020. You actually can't say that about AOC. You cannot level that criticism at AOC. In fact, it was her endorsement of Bernie in 2020 that really did push him over the top as like the front runner in that race.
After he had a heart attack.
After he had a heart attack. That was a very courageous thing. AOC very easily could have capitulated to the establishment in the wake of that heart attack and said, sorry, I think I'm going to have to go with Warren or Buttigieg or Biden or whatever. I'm going to join the establishment just like Simone Sanders had, right? Nope. She was like, fuck it. I'm supporting Bernie Sanders. And to me, that always will be a real badge of courage and something that I'll never forget because, you know, she really came in clutch. She came in fucking clutch along with Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. So, you know, as much as I criticize Warren for that, I have to always give credit to AOC for doing the right thing. And again, that was a real sign of her courage, a sign of her, you know, loyalty and consistency to the movement that elected her. So that was important. And I think that AOC has a lot of potential as a leader. I think, especially under the Trump administration, she's really shown. And I'm excited to see what happens. Hopefully she's able to convince some of the cynics and some of the critics that she will be an aggressive revolutionary change maker if elected. Because again, I think she has that potential. I also do think she has the potential to be underwhelming and disappointing were she to find herself in that sort of position, just because I don't think you can really point to all that many huge wins as a congressperson that she's racked up. Like, I mean, I think she's voted the right way for the most part, but very few times has she really aggressively come in there and resisted leadership, been the left flank we wanted her to be. So that's my issue with AOC, but I'm hoping she continues to mature and evolve into a real effective leader and politician. But, you know, just to clarify, that is why yesterday on the show, I said that if I had my pick, it would be Tim Walz. Why? Because Tim Walz has the record. You know, AOC, there's only so much you can do as a congresswoman. Tim Walz actually has a real record of accomplishments you can point to. So that would be my ideal candidate. But I would never diminish the potential in what AOC has to offer in the future.
Yeah, I love the idea of a Tim Walz AOC ticket, you know, Walz AOC, like top bottom ticket. Anyway, one thing I will point out before we get to the super chats that really stood out to me was I was having a conversation with Kate last night at Afterward, and my old boss when I used to be a bartender, and we were chatting, and you know, she looked at me and completely unprompted just said, I don't know, man, it's been really hard to take the Democrats seriously ever since they fucked Bernie and went with Hillary Clinton, who we all knew were going to lose. And I remember thinking I have to save this moment and tell it to my audience because I like Kate doesn't watch the show like that, you know, like she's proud of me. Like she was like, oh, congratulations on 100K when I saw her, but they don't know anything that I don't like put on my Instagram to like be like, hey, I did this personal thing. You know what I mean? But to have her look at me and she'll be like, I voted for Gary Johnson after that because fuck everybody else. And I was like, well, yeah, I've got, some disagreements with you about your decision to vote for Gary Johnson. And, she was like, I'm not even a political person. She was like, but I was excited to vote for Bernie Sanders. And
I know a lot of people. My sister also was a huge Bernie fan, but then she voted for Jill Stein in 2016, as did I. Cards on the table.
yeah. So it just means regular people understand when there's a person that's actually, standing up for them. That's why Bernie draws these crowds. That's why people like AOC. And I'm hoping that she just learns the right lesson. And like, hey, if you do go with the message that Bernie Sanders laid out and trailblaze, people are going to show up for you. They're going to support you, and all that shit.
Yep. 100%. And AOC is also just a good communicator, especially in the internet age. She knows how to trigger right wingers, which I think the value of that cannot be fucking understated, guys. The ability to trigger the fuck out of right wingers. AOC has that in spades. Could you imagine the fucking meltdown, Zach, from Fox News and the right wing? If someone like AOC was the Democratic nominee, it would be everything the Democratic Party needs. And the Democratic Party is so allergic to leaning into controversy and to bold, aggressive values, right? Anything that could potentially, ruffle feathers. They need someone to lean into controversy. They need someone to lean into the feather ruffling. That's what is necessary for the brand of the Democratic Party. And AOC is the perfect person to manifest that energy because, again, it would drive the right wingers fucking crazy to an extent that we've never even seen.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there. Be there.